well-established, we have one of the longest-standing democratic regimes, unbroken democratic regimes in history. We are one of the most stable regimes in history. There are very few countries that can say for nearly 150 years they've had the same political system without any social breakdown, political upheaval, or invasion. We are unique in that regard. We also have no history of colonialism. So we have all of the things that many people admire about the great powers, but none of the things that threaten or bother them about the great powers. We also...
Yes, we acknowledge the terrible wrongs generations of Canadian governments and institutions and individuals perpetrated on Indigenous peoples throughout our history. But we cannot only get wrapped up in the difficulties, even though they color everything we exist. We do have to take moments to celebrate. We do have to take moments to stand strongly and proudly in learning from each other and celebrating culture and identity and watching Indigenous people stand up strongly and clearly say, we're still here. We know the horror of residential schools. And we know that for generations, Canada tried very, very hard to erase Indigenous identity, culture, and strength. But even as residential schools were busy teaching Indigenous children that they had no value, every other school in this country was busy teaching non-Indigenous children that Indigenous children had no value. All schools were sharing that wronghood. And that's why reconciliation cannot just happen with Indigenous peoples. It's why all of us need to recognize our roles that continue through systemic discrimination, through unconscious bias, through the kinds of barriers that continue every single day in our present, not just in our past.
Is that this was a disastrous error, incompatible with the gospel of Jesus Christ. It is painful to think of how the firm soil of values, language, and culture that made up the authentic identity of your peoples was eroded, and that you have continued to pay the price of this. In the face of this deplorable evil, the Church kneels before God and implores His forgiveness for the sins of her children. I myself wish to reaffirm this with shame and unambiguously. I humbly beg forgiveness for the evil committed by so many Christians against the Indigenous peoples.